All right, guys, we're going to be going over the Special Factors page today, which looks at a few different things, assistive technology, low incidence services, English learner, and information about behavior. So let's go ahead and dive in. The first question asks, does the student require assistive technology devices and or services? So you either want to mark yes or no, but make sure that you as a whole IEP team are actually discussing whether or not the student needs these devices or services. You want to consider both high-tech and low-tech devices, including but not limited to visual icons, visual schedules, tablets, alternative communication systems, as appropriate for each individual student. You also want to make sure that the IEP team, which would likely include, for example, a speech and language pathologist for communication needs, and possibly an OT for fine motor needs, to see if they will need to consider whether there is enough evidence to determine the need for a specific AT device or material, or if your team is going to want to look at possibly doing a formal assistive tech assessment. But please make sure that no AT services by the assistive tech are provided or written here without consultation or without an actual assessment completed by the assistive technology specialist. Okay, so in the rationale, you also want to make sure that you are including this for either yes or no. And any systems or services recommended by the team should be included here. So you don't want to use the specific brand names. So I'm going to highlight that area here. Use of specific brand names should be avoided. For example, use of tablet, not the iPad, visual icons, not PECs. So make sure that you're not using a specific brand name in this area. All right. The second question is, does the student require low incidence services, equipment, and or material to meet the educational goals? So you're going to either mark yes or no in this area. You're going to also want to make sure that only students who are eligible for special education under the eligibility category of deaf and hard of hearing, visually impaired, or orthopedically impaired are actually eligible for low incidence services and or equipment. If you are marking yes, just make sure that you are specifying that information, but you're also collaborating with appropriate service providers such as the OT, PT, or the DHH or VI specialist. All right. In terms of considerations, if the student is blind or visually impaired, you want to look at things such as, do they need enlarged print? Do they need the use of Braille or other supports from the VI or orientation and mobility team? In terms of deaf and hard of hearing, same thing. If there are considerations, you want to list those here. It could be something like an FM system, an amplifying device, or something as simple as preferential seating. All right, but make sure that anything in the above sections, if you have anything that's listed here, it should also be reflected on the service page under accommodations in the modifications section of the IEP. All right. And we're going to be moving down to the English learner section. So here, if the student's an English learner, complete the following sections. So does the student need primary language support? Yes or no. You're going to want to know if if your student's an English learner. You can look on the info and eligibility page. This is usually determined through the administration of the home language survey and the LPAC, as well as the alternative LPAC for the students. So make sure that you are looking at your student information system. Usually Illuminate will have that, but it'll also be on the first page, the info and eligibility page of the IEP. All right. After you've marked whether or not they are EL and will need support in their primary language, you're also going to want to write how. How is this going to be provided? And usually in here, you're going to want to make sure that you're describing that the student must at least receive 30 minutes a minimum of 30 minutes a day of designated English instruction through their language arts ELA program. And then you can describe anything further down here. So we have a sample written for you, integrated ELD scaffolding strategies to access core curriculum and designated ELD lessons for a minimum of 30 minutes daily per student's language proficiency level. All right. We have where will the ELD services be provided to the student? So depending on whether or not your student's being mainstreamed or if they're in the general education setting, you're going to want to make sure to mark the appropriate program. If your student's not mainstreaming in the general education, then you're just going to mark special education. But maybe you have your student in the ELD program, or your student is also mainstreaming in gen ed. So depending on what program they are, you're going to mark the appropriate boxes. The student will participate in the following type of program. You have a structured English immersion program or alternative language program. The structured English immersion program is a structured class setting where nearly all the classes that we have within Fremont are providing instruction in English and presenting information designed for pupils who are learning English. The alternative language program is a program such as a dual immersion program where they're being taught in both their home language and in English. 95% of you will probably be choosing the structured English immersion program. All right. And then the comment section, if there's anything specific in regards to how you're going to be providing these ELD minutes and what that will look like inside of your program, you can just go ahead and describe that here in the comments. All right. So moving down to the last section, it asks, does the student's behavior impede learning of self or others? So here you really want to make sure that you're looking to see if the student is exhibiting any type of behaviors that is impeding the learning of self or others. If it is determined that the student's behaviors are impeding learning, then the team should determine if a behavior goal is appropriate and what strategies and supports are needed. If the behavior tends to be or ends up being significant enough that you're going to be using a behavior intervention plan, be sure that you're attaching the behavior intervention plan to the IEP document. So if they are impeding the learning of self or others, you're going to indicate so here, and then you're going to describe it. If yes, specify the positive behavior intervention strategies. You want to describe a little bit of it, but then you're also going to say whether or not you're going to be creating a goal, or if the behaviors are significant enough that you're going to need to create a behavior intervention plan. All right. If you need more support in the development of behavior intervention plan, you can go ahead and look on the Special Education Online Handbook, but the development of the BIP should be coming initially from the case manager with support from the school psychologist. And if anything is listed here in the behavior section, please also make sure that it's also reflected on the present levels under the social, emotional / behavioral section. These, when we're looking at IEPs, we always want to make sure that information is represented on the correct pages. So you also want to have it on the present levels as well as this section. All right. And if they have any behavior goals that are requiring additional accommodations or modifications, then those also need to be represented on the services page for the accommodations and or modifications. All right, guys. Thank you.